"Shut up, black girl," one of the white bullies immediately said as he smacked Jasmine's face hard with his right palm. "Didn't your mom teach you to behave in public?" he immediately asked as he mocked her. "Stay put and let's shave this stupid head of yours and be on our way." The bullies all laughed as they mocked and shaved the hair of Jasmine. What they all didn't know was that they had just crossed the red line. What they didn't know was that Jasmine had a secret guardian, her father, and he was a Hell's Angel. What happens when three silly white teenage bullies cross the line and mess with the daughter of a Hell's Angel? Stick with us on the wonderful story, and you will find out. If you are new to this channel, we appreciate you. If you haven't subscribed already, do it now. Subscribe to the channel now and hit the notification bell so that you don't miss our next story. We post quality stories every day on this channel just for you. By the time Jasmine Walker looked in the mirror, the whole town had already seen her humiliation. She stood in the gas station bathroom, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, staring at the stranger in the reflection. Her hands trembled as they moved across her scalp, feeling nothing but smooth skin where thick, beautiful coils had been just an hour ago. Her phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Notification after notification. Laughing emojis. Shocked faces. The video spreading like wildfire through every social media platform in their small Pennsylvania town. The bathroom door was locked, but Jasmine could hear people outside. Whispers. Giggles. Someone said her name. She turned on the faucet to drown out the sounds, splashing cold water on her face, watching it drip down into the sink. When she looked up again, her eyes were red, but no tears came. She was beyond crying now. She was somewhere else entirely, somewhere cold and numb. Before we go any further, hit that subscribe button right now. You're not going to believe what happens next, and you don't want to miss a single moment of this story. Trust me, this is just the beginning. 3 hours earlier, Jasmine had walked into Wilson High School like she did every Tuesday morning. Her backpack was heavy with textbooks, her mind already running through the calculus test in third period. She wore her hair in a high puff, edges laid perfectly, the way she'd spent 20 minutes getting them that morning. It was a small thing, but it mattered to her. Her hair was her crown, her heritage, her pride. Jasmine wasn't the type to draw attention. She kept her head down, earned straight A's, worked weekends at the grocery store to help her dad with bills. She had exactly 3 close friends and preferred it that way. At 17, she'd already figured out that visibility could be dangerous, especially for someone like her in a town like this. Wilson Creek was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, where the same families had held power for generations, where certain kids could do anything and face no consequences. Kids like Brock Henderson, Tyler Morrison, and Kayla Brennan. They sat together at lunch every day at the table closest to the windows, the table everyone knew belonged to them. Brock was the quarterback, blonde hair always perfectly styled, wearing his Letterman jacket even in warm weather. His father owned the largest car dealership in 3 counties. Tyler was his shadow, tall and lanky, cruel eyes that lingered too long, whose mother sat on the school board. Kayla came from old money, the kind of family with a street named after them, with perfect skin and a smile that never reached her eyes. They'd noticed Jasmine a month ago. Started small. Comments in the hallway. "Nice hair, Jasmine. Looks so natural." The word natural sounding like an insult the way Kayla said it. Shoulder bumps in crowded corridors. Books knocked off her desk. Teachers looking away, suddenly very interested in their lesson plans. Jasmine told herself to ignore it. She'd dealt with subtle racism before. The microaggressions, the coded language, the way certain people looked at her like she didn't belong. This town had 12 black families total. She knew how to make herself small, how to survive. But that Tuesday morning, things changed. It happened during gym class. Coach Peters had called in sick, and the substitute was some college kid who spent the entire period on his phone. Half the class had disappeared to the parking lot to vape. Jasmine stayed in the locker room, changing back into her school clothes, already thinking about the essay she needed to finish for English. She heard them before she saw them. Footsteps, whispers, the door to the main gym closing with a heavy click. When Jasmine turned around, all 3 of them were there. Brock, Tyler, Kayla.
and they were smiling. "Hey, Jasmine," Brock said casual, like they were friends. "We wanted to talk to you." Jasmine's instincts screamed. She grabbed her bag, tried to move past them, but Tyler stepped in front of the exit. The locker room suddenly felt very small. "We're not going to hurt you," Kayla said, examining her nails. "We just think you need a makeover." "Move," Jasmine said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "I need to get to class." "Class can wait," Brock replied. He pulled something from his jacket pocket. "Electric clippers, the kind used for cutting hair. This will only take a minute." Jasmine backed up, but there was nowhere to go. The locker room had one exit, and they were blocking it. "Don't touch me," she warned. "I'm serious." "Don't, or what?" Tyler laughed. "You'll tell someone? Who's going to believe you over us?" That's when Kayla pulled out her phone, already recording. "This is going to be so good," she said. What happened next lasted maybe 10 minutes, but it felt like hours. Jasmine fought. She screamed. She tried to run, to push past them, but Brock was strong from years of football, and Tyler held her arms while Kayla kept filming. The clippers turned on with an electric buzz that Jasmine would hear in her nightmares for weeks afterward. They didn't say much while they did it. Just laughed. Made jokes. Commented on what they were doing like they were giving her a spa treatment. When it was over, when her beautiful hair lay in dark clumps on the tile floor, they stepped back and admired their work. "Much better," Kayla said, still filming. "You should thank us. We did you a favor." Then they left. Just walked out like nothing had happened, leaving Jasmine alone on the floor, surrounded by pieces of herself. She didn't know how long she sat there. Long enough for the period to end, for the hallways to fill with students heading to lunch. When she finally stood up, her legs felt like they belonged to someone else. She picked up her bag, pulled her hood over her head, and walked straight out of school. Nobody stopped her. Nobody asked if she was okay. By the time she reached the gas station 3 blocks away, the video was already online. #Jasmine got served was trending locally. The comments were brutal. Some people called it funny. Others said she deserved it for being too proud of her natural hair. A few expressed sympathy, but quietly, in private messages they'd delete later. Now, standing in that bathroom, Jasmine finally let herself feel it. The violation. The humiliation. The rage. She pulled out her phone with shaking hands and called the one person who'd always protected her. Her father answered on the first ring. "Jasmine? You okay, baby?" She tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. All that came out was a sob, the first real sound she'd made since it happened. "Where are you?" Marcus Walker's voice changed instantly, going from gentle to alert. "Jasmine, where are you right now?" "Gas station," she managed. "On Miller Road. Don't move. I'm coming." 13 minutes later, a pickup truck pulled into the parking lot. Marcus Walker stepped out, and Jasmine had never been so relieved to see anyone in her life. He was a big man, 6'3", with dark skin weathered from years working outdoors. At 45, he still moved with purpose, still commanded attention even in his simple work clothes. When he saw her walk out of that gas station, hood still pulled up, his expression didn't change much. Marcus wasn't the type to show emotion easily. But Jasmine saw his jaw tighten, saw the way his hands curled into fists at his sides. "Let me see," he said quietly. Jasmine pulled back her hood. For a long moment, Marcus just looked at his daughter. Then he reached out and gently touched her head, the gesture so tender it almost broke her. "Who did this?" She told him everything. The names, the video, the way they'd laughed, the way no one had stopped them. Marcus listened without interrupting, his face a mask, but Jasmine knew him well enough to see the storm building behind his eyes. When she finished, he was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Get in the truck. We're going home." They drove in silence. Jasmine watched the town pass by through the window, this place she'd lived her entire life, wondering how it could look exactly the same when everything had changed. When they pulled into their driveway, Marcus didn't go inside immediately. He sat there, hands on the steering wheel, staring straight ahead. "Dad," Jasmine said softly. "You did nothing wrong," he said. "You understand me? Nothing. What they did, that's on them. That's their sin, not yours. Nobody's going to do anything about it," Jasmine said, and she hated how defeated she sounded. "You know how it works here. Those families, they run everything." Marcus turned to look at her. "Go inside. Take a shower. Rest. I need to make a phone call." There was something in his voice Jasmine had never heard before. Something that made her hesitate. "Dad, what are you going to do?" "Nothing you need to worry about," he said. "I promise you, baby girl, this gets handled." Jasmine went inside, but she watched through the window as her father walked to the end of their driveway, phone pressed to his ear. He stood there for 5 minutes, barely moving, speaking too quietly for her to hear. When he came back inside, he seemed different somehow. Taller, older, like he'd put on a coat she'd never seen him wear before. What Jasmine didn't know, what she'd never known, was who her father used to be. Marcus Walker had been born Marcus Ghost Walker, a name he'd earned 25 years ago when he'd been patched into the Hells Angels at 19. For 15 years, he'd been a brother, a soldier, a man people respected and feared in equal measure. He'd seen things, done things, lived a life that had no place in the world he'd built for his daughter. When Jasmine's mother died in childbirth, Marcus had made a choice. He'd walked away from the club, from that life, with their blessing. They'd understood. Family came first, always. He'd moved to this small town specifically because it was quiet, safe, boring. A place where his daughter could grow up without the shadows that had followed him. For 17 years, he'd been just Marcus Walker, truck driver, single father, quiet man who kept to himself. The tattoos on his back and shoulders stayed hidden under long sleeves. The scars had faded. The bikes in his garage stayed covered. He'd become exactly what he needed to be for Jasmine. But that phone call changed everything. The man who answered was called Reaper, president of the Pennsylvania chapter. Marcus hadn't spoken to him in 3 years, but some bonds don't break. "Ghost," Reaper said, and the old name felt like putting on an old jacket. "Been a while." "It happened," Marcus said simply. "Your girl?" "Yeah." Silence. "Then, tell me," Marcus told him. When he finished, Reaper let out a long breath. "Those kids got names?" "They do. And the families, rich. Connected. The kind who think money makes them untouchable." Another pause. "You asking for a ride, brother?" Marcus looked back at his house, where his daughter was probably sitting in her room, probably still in shock. "I'm asking for presence. No blood, no violence, just presence. I want them to understand there are consequences. You know, once we roll in, people are going to remember who you were. I know. And you're okay with that? With your daughter knowing?" Marcus thought about Jasmine's face in that gas station, the way she'd looked broken in a way he'd never seen before. She needs to know she's protected. That's all that matters. "All right then," Reaper said. "Give me 6 hours. And Ghost, welcome back." The sun was setting when the first motorcycles arrived in Wilson Creek. They came in groups of 2 and 3, riding slowly through town, not making a scene, not drawing attention. They parked in different locations, a few outside the diner, some near the school, others just cruising past the addresses Marcus had provided. To most people, they were just bikers passing through. But to the people who needed to see them, the message was clear. The patches on their jackets, the way they moved, the way they looked at certain houses as they rode past. It all said the same thing. Someone here had made a very big mistake. At the Henderson house, Brock's father, Richard, was the first to notice. He was standing in his kitchen when he saw 2 motorcycles slow down in front of his property. The riders didn't stop, didn't gesture, just looked straight at him, then kept going. Richard Henderson had lived in Wilson Creek his entire life. He'd never been in a fight, never dealt with real trouble, but he'd seen enough movies, heard enough stories. He knew what Hell's Angels patches looked like, and he knew they didn't just show up randomly in small Pennsylvania towns. His phone rang 10 minutes later. Tyler Morrison's mother. "Richard, are you seeing this? There are bikers everywhere." "I saw them," Richard said, his voice tight. "What the hell is going on?" "I don't know." But he had a sinking feeling he did know. He thought about the video his son had shown him earlier, the one he'd told Brock to delete, the one he'd laughed at despite the uncomfortable feeling in his gut. "Where's Tyler?" "Upstairs." "Why?" "Richard, you don't think this has anything to do with that girl, do you?" Richard didn't answer. He was too busy watching another motorcycle cruise past his house. At the Brennan estate, Kayla's parents were hosting a dinner party when the call came. The police chief, apologetic, explaining there'd been reports of motorcycle club activity in town. Nothing to worry about, he assured them, but perhaps it would be wise to be aware of their surroundings for the next few days. "Motorcycle club?" Kayla's father, Thomas Brennan, asked sharply. "What kind of motorcycle club?" The police chief hesitated. "The kind we don't usually see in Wilson Creek, sir." After he hung up, Thomas went to find his daughter. She was in her room, scrolling through her phone, smiling at something on her screen. "Kayla, that video you posted today. The one with that black girl. Take it down." "What? Why? Everyone thinks it's hilarious." "Take it down now," Thomas said, and there was an edge to his voice that made Kayla look up. "And you're not leaving this house until I say so." "Dad, what's going on?" But Thomas Brennan didn't answer. He was too busy trying to figure out why half a dozen Hell's Angels had just rolled into his town, and why he had a terrible feeling it had something to do with his daughter. "Hey, quick question for everyone watching. What time is it where you are right now? Drop it in the comments below. And while you're down there, tell us exactly where you're watching from. We love seeing how far these stories reach. Now, back to what happened next, because things are about to get really intense. That night, Marcus sat with Jasmine in their living room. She'd showered and changed, but she still looked fragile in a way that made his chest ache. She was wearing one of his old hoodies pulled up over her head. "I called in sick to work," Marcus said. "I'm not leaving you alone tomorrow." "Dad, you don't have to do that. I'll be fine. You're not going to school tomorrow." "I can't just hide," Jasmine said, but her voice was small. "If I don't go back, they win." "They already lost," Marcus said quietly. "They just don't know it yet." Jasmine looked at him, really looked at him. "What did you do?" "I made sure people know what happened. Made sure the right people are paying attention." "What people?" Marcus hesitated. He'd known this conversation would come eventually. He'd just hoped it would be under different circumstances. "Jasmine, there are things about my past I've never told you. Things I did before you were born. People I used to know. I left that life because I wanted something different for us, something better. But those people, those connections, they don't just disappear. I don't understand. Before I was your dad, I was part of something. A brotherhood. And when someone hurts family, the brotherhood responds." Jasmine's eyes widened. "Are you talking about a gang?" "Not a gang. A club. Motorcycle club. The Hell's Angels." For a moment, Jasmine just stared at him. Then she laughed, a short, disbelieving sound. "You're joking. I wish I was. You? You're a truck driver. You wear reading glasses. You make me breakfast every morning. You're not." "I'm a father first," Marcus interrupted gently. "That's who I chose to be. But I was something else before, and the people I knew then, they haven't forgotten me. And when I called them today, when I told them what happened to you, they came. They came here, to Wilson Creek." Marcus nodded. "They're here now, and they're going to make sure everyone understands that what happened to you can't be swept under the rug." Jasmine pulled the hoodie tighter around herself. "I don't want anyone to get hurt. No one's going to get hurt," Marcus promised. "That's not what this is about. This is about making people uncomfortable, making them face what they did, making them understand there are consequences for their actions. But those kids, their families run this town. Not tonight, they don't." The next morning, Wilson Creek woke up different. The motorcycles were still there, parked at strategic locations throughout town. The bikers sat in the diner drinking coffee, walked through the grocery store, stood outside the police station, not threatening, not aggressive, just present. By 8 a.m., the school board had called an emergency meeting. By 9, the local news had picked up the story, though they were being careful with how they framed it. By 10, 3 lawyers had arrived in town, all of them representing the families of Brock Henderson, Tyler Morrison, and Kayla Brennan. And by noon, the video that had spread so quickly the day before was gone, deleted from every platform. But screenshots remained, and more importantly, people remembered. Principal Carr sat in his office, sweating through his shirt despite the air conditioning. On his desk were 3 phone calls he didn't want to make and 1 he'd already received. The superintendent had been very clear. This situation needed to be handled immediately, quietly, and in a way that made the bikers leave town. "I don't understand how this happened," Carr said to the 2 guidance counselors sitting across from him. "A student was assaulted on school property, on video, and no one reported it. The substitute teacher didn't see anything," one counselor offered weakly. "Because he was on his phone." Carr slammed his hand on the desk. "And now we have Hell's Angels in town, and the media asking questions, and lawyers calling me every 5 minutes. What do you want us to do?" Carr took a deep breath. "Get Jasmine Walker and her father in here. Now." But Marcus Walker was already on his way. He pulled into the school parking lot at 1:15, Jasmine in the passenger seat. She'd insisted on coming, despite his protests. She needed to face this, she'd said. Needed to see it through. As they walked into the building, students stopped and stared. Some looked guilty. Others looked scared. A few looked sympathetic. Jasmine kept her hood up, but she walked with her head high. In Principal Carr's office, they found not just the principal, but also the school's lawyer, a representative from the district office, and Officer Hamilton from the Wilson Creek PD. Everyone stood when Marcus and Jasmine entered. "Mr. Walker, Jasmine, thank you for coming," Carr began. "We wanted to. You wanted to make this go away." Marcus interrupted, his voice calm but hard. "You wanted to offer some empty apology, maybe a suspension or 2, and hope we'd forget about it. That's not. My daughter was assaulted on your property, in your building, by 3 students who have a documented history of bullying that your staff has ignored for months. They filmed it. They posted it online. They humiliated her in front of the entire town." Marcus stepped forward. "And your first instinct wasn't to call the police. It wasn't to contact me. It was to hope it would blow over." The room was silent. "Mr. Walker," the district representative said carefully, "we understand you're upset." "Upset?" Marcus smiled, and it wasn't a kind smile. "No, I'm not upset. Upset is what you feel when someone cuts you off in traffic. What I am is very, very focused on making sure my daughter gets justice. We want that too," Carr insisted. "We're prepared to take serious action against the students involved. Define serious action. Suspension. Mandatory counseling. Formal apologies. Not good enough. Mr. Walker, we have to follow certain protocols. And I have to protect my daughter," Marcus said. "Those kids committed assault, battery, possibly a hate crime. That's not a school matter. That's a criminal matter." Officer Hamilton shifted uncomfortably. "Mr. Walker, if Jasmine wants to press charges, she can. She does." Everyone looked at Jasmine. She pulled back her hood, meeting their eyes for the first time. "I want to press charges," she said clearly. "Against all 3 of them." The lawyer cleared his throat. "Miss Walker, you should know that the families of these students have significant resources. Legal action could be lengthy and difficult. Are you threatening her?" Marcus asked quietly, and something in his tone made everyone in the room tense. "No, of course not. I'm simply stating facts." "Here's a fact for you," Marcus said. "My daughter is filing a police report today. She's pressing charges. And if this school doesn't expel those students and take real accountability for what happened here, then we're also filing a civil suit against the district for negligence and creating a hostile environment. Those are your options." Carr looked at the lawyer, who nodded slightly. Mr. Walker, Jasmine, we are prepared to offer a settlement. Counseling fees covered, private tutoring if needed, and a formal statement of support. No settlement, Jasmine said, surprising even her father. I don't want money. I want them to face consequences. Real consequences. The same consequences any other student would face if they attacked someone on school property. The district representative leaned forward. What exactly do you want? Expulsion, Jasmine said. For all three of them. A formal investigation into how this happened and why no teacher intervened. And I want a school-wide assembly addressing bullying and racism with mandatory attendance. That's... Carr started, then stopped. That's actually reasonable. And one more thing, Marcus added. My daughter goes back to school tomorrow if she chooses to. And she does so knowing that she's safe, that she's supported, and that if anyone even looks at her wrong, this entire conversation starts over. There was a long pause. Then the district representative nodded. Agreed. We'll begin the expulsion process today. The assembly will be scheduled for next week. Officer Hamilton, please take Miss Walker's statement. As they left the office an hour later, official police report filed, Jasmine felt something she hadn't felt since yesterday morning. Hope. Not justice yet, but the beginning of it. Outside, the sun was bright. A motorcycle sat in the parking lot, its rider leaning against it, arms crossed. He nodded once to Marcus, who nodded back. Then the rider started his engine and drove away. If you're not subscribed yet, do it now. Hit that button, because we're not done. There's still so much more to this story, and you need to hear what happens to those bullies. The news spread fast. By that evening, everyone in Wilson Creek knew that the Henderson kid, the Morrison boy, and the Brennan girl were being expelled. The details were murky, but the facts were clear. They'd done something bad enough to bring Hell's Angels to town, bad enough to get them kicked out of school. At the Henderson house, Richard sat across from his son in the living room. Brock had been crying, his face red and puffy. Dad, you have to do something. They can't expel me. I'll lose my scholarship, my whole future. You should have thought about that before you assaulted someone. Richard said coldly. It was just a joke. We were just messing around. You shaved a girl's head against her will while your friends filmed it. That's not a joke, Brock. That's assault. And now there's a police report, and lawyers are telling me we're lucky if she doesn't press criminal charges. But those bikers are the least of your problems, Richard interrupted. Do you have any idea what you've done to that girl, to yourself, to this family? Your grandfather's name is on a building at that school, and now everyone's going to remember us as the family whose son committed a hate crime. It wasn't about race. Then why'd you do it? Why'd you pick her? Brock didn't have an answer for that. Similar conversations were happening in the Morrison and Brennan households. Tyler's mother was on her third glass of wine, sobbing about how her baby's life was ruined. Tyler sat in his room, scrolling through social media where he'd been transformed from popular kid to villain in less than 24 hours. Kayla's parents had hired 3 lawyers, but even they had admitted the case was bad. The video evidence was damning, even though it had been deleted. Screenshots existed. Witnesses had come forward, students who'd seen Jasmine right after it happened, who'd heard the 3 of them bragging about it at lunch. We can fight this, Thomas Brennan said to his daughter. We can claim she consented, that it was a prank gone wrong. Dad, there's a video of me holding her down, Kayla said flatly. She'd stopped crying hours ago. Now she just felt numb. Everyone saw it. Everyone knows what we did. So what? You're just giving up. I'm facing reality, Kayla said. We messed up. We really, really messed up. And now we have to deal with it. For the first time in her life, Kayla Brennan understood that her family's money and name couldn't fix everything. The assembly happened the following Monday. The entire student body of Wilson High School filed into the gymnasium, whispering, speculating. Jasmine sat in the front row, her father beside her. She'd spent the weekend getting used to her shaved head, learning to see it not as a mark of shame, but as a symbol of survival. Principal Carr stood at the podium, his face grave. "We're here today because something happened at this school that should never have happened. A student was assaulted, humiliated, violated in a way that no young person should ever experience." The gymnasium was silent. As educators, as leaders, we failed. We failed to create an environment where every student feels safe. We failed to address warning signs. We failed to act quickly enough when action was needed. Carr's voice was heavy. 3 students have been expelled for their actions. But that's not enough. We need to do better. All of us. For the next hour, speakers took the podium. A civil rights lawyer talked about hate crimes and discrimination. A psychologist discussed the lasting trauma of bullying. A former victim shared their story of survival. And then it was Jasmine's turn. She hadn't planned to speak. But when Carr asked if she wanted to say anything, something inside her said yes. She walked to the podium, her legs shaking, and looked out at hundreds of faces staring back at her. "My name is Jasmine Walker," she began, her voice small at first, but growing stronger. "A week ago, 3 students held me down in the locker room and shaved my head while filming it. They did it because they thought it would be funny, because they thought I wouldn't fight back, because they thought no one would care." She paused, gripping the podium. "They were wrong. People did care. My father cared enough to make sure I got justice. The district cared enough to take action. And all of you care enough to be here listening right now." Jasmine looked around the gym. "I'm not going to lie and say I'm okay. I'm not. What they did hurt me in ways that are going to take a long time to heal. But I'm still here. I'm still standing. And I'm not going to let what they did define me." Someone in the back started clapping. Then another person. Then another. Within seconds, the entire gymnasium was on their feet, applauding. Jasmine looked at her father, who was wiping his eyes, smiling at her with more pride than she'd ever seen. "Make sure to hit that like button if you're proud of Jasmine too. She deserves all the support we can give her. And keep watching, because the story's not over yet." The weeks that followed weren't easy. Jasmine had nightmares, panic attacks in crowded spaces, days where she couldn't bring herself to leave the house. Marcus found her a therapist, a black woman named Dr. Richardson, who specialized in trauma and racial violence. "Healing isn't linear," Dr. Richardson told her in their second session. "Some days you'll feel strong. Other days you'll feel broken. Both are valid." Jasmine learned to talk about what happened without breaking down. She learned that anger was okay, that rage was a natural response to violation. She learned that her hair would grow back, but more importantly, she learned that her worth was never tied to her hair in the first place. At school, things changed too. Teachers who'd looked away before now made eye contact. Students who'd laughed at the video privately messaged her with apologies. Some were genuine, others were just covering their asses, but Jasmine learned to accept both. She also learned who her real friends were. The ones who'd checked on her every day, who'd sat with her at lunch when others whispered, who'd walked with her in the hallways when she felt vulnerable. "You're kind of famous now," her friend Maya said one afternoon as they studied in the library. "People are calling you brave." "I don't feel brave," Jasmine admitted. "I feel angry. And tired, and scared that it might happen again." "It won't," Maya said firmly. "Everyone's too scared now. Did you see what happened to the Morrison family?" Jasmine had heard. Tyler's mother had resigned from the school board. His father's construction company had lost several major contracts. People in town had stopped doing business with families who'd tried to defend what the 3 students had done. The Brennans had fared even worse. Thomas Brennan's law firm had lost 3 of its biggest clients. The family had quietly put their house on the market. And Brock Henderson, his full-ride football scholarship, had been revoked. No other school would touch him. The viral video had made sure of that. "Is it wrong that I don't feel bad for them?" Jasmine asked quietly. "No," Maya said. "They made choices. Now they're living with the consequences. That's not your fault. But sometimes, late at night, Jasmine did feel bad. Not for what they were going through, but for the fact that it had taken something so dramatic to make people care. How many other kids had been bullied, hurt, violated, and nothing had been done because they didn't have a father with connections? Because they didn't have Hell's Angels willing to ride into town. The unfairness of it kept her awake some nights. Marcus noticed. One evening, he found her sitting on the porch, staring out at the street. He sat down beside her without saying anything, just being present. "Dad," Jasmine finally said. "What happens to the kids whose fathers aren't Hell's Angels, who don't have anyone to protect them?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "That's the question, isn't it? That's why what happened to you can't just be about you. It has to be about changing the system that let it happen. How do I do that? You keep telling your story. You keep pushing for change. You make sure that what happened to you is the last time it happens at that school. That's a lot of responsibility." "It is," Marcus agreed. "And you don't have to carry it alone. But if you choose to, I'll be right here beside you." Jasmine leaned against her father's shoulder. "Why did you leave the club?" "The real reason." Marcus wrapped an arm around her. "Because I wanted to be your father more than I wanted to be anything else. That life, it was exciting, it was powerful, but it was also dangerous and unpredictable. I wanted stability for you. Safety. A normal childhood. Do you regret it? Leaving?" "Not for a second," Marcus said firmly. "But I'm glad they were still there when we needed them. Some bonds don't break, even after years apart. Are they still in town?" "A few. Reaper checks in every few days, but mostly they've moved on. They came, they sent the message they needed to send, and now they're letting the system do its job. Will I meet them? Reaper and the others?" Marcus smiled. "If you want to. They'd like to meet you. They've heard a lot about you." "What did you tell them?" "That you're strong. That you're kind. That you're everything good I could have hoped for." He paused. "And that anyone who messes with you is going to have to deal with both your father and his brothers." Jasmine laughed, the first real laugh she'd had in weeks. It felt good. 2 months after the incident, Jasmine started a club at school. She called it Voices, and its mission was simple: create a space where students who'd experienced bullying could share their stories and support each other. The first meeting had 6 students. The second had 15. By the third, they had to move to a larger classroom. Jasmine listened to stories that broke her heart. A transgender boy who'd been harassed in the bathroom. A girl with a learning disability who'd been mocked by her peers. An immigrant student who'd been told to go back where you came from. Each story was different, but the pain was the same. The feeling of being invisible, of not mattering, of being powerless. "We matter," Jasmine told them at every meeting. "Our stories matter. Our pain matters. And we're going to make sure this school hears us." They started a petition demanding better anti-bullying policies. They presented it to the school board with over 300 signatures. They organized awareness days. They created a reporting system where students could safely report incidents without fear of retaliation. Principal Carr, to his credit, supported them. He'd learned his lesson the hard way, and he wasn't about to repeat his mistakes. The district brought in consultants. Teachers received new training. Policies were updated and enforced. Wilson High School was changing, slowly but surely. Before we get to the end, I want to ask you something. Are you subscribed? If not, what are you waiting for? This channel brings you stories that matter. Stories about justice, about standing up for what's right. Hit that subscribe button right now. And drop a comment telling us what you think of Jasmine's story. Should those bullies have faced even harsher consequences? Let us know. On a cool evening in early spring, 6 months after the incident, Marcus invited some visitors to their home. Jasmine had agreed to meet them. Curious about this part of her father's life she'd never known existed. Reaper arrived first, a tall man in his 50s with a gray beard and calm eyes. He shook Jasmine's hand gently. "Your father's told me a lot about you." He's told me almost nothing about you, Jasmine replied, and Reaper laughed. That sounds like Ghost. Always keeping his worlds separate. He looked at Marcus. You raised a brave one, brother. Two more arrived, a woman named Raven and a younger man called Torch. They sat in the living room, drinking coffee, and for the first time, Jasmine heard stories about her father's past. The roads he'd traveled. The brotherhood he'd been part of. The reasons he'd left. He gave up a lot for you, Raven said to Jasmine. Left behind brothers, left behind a life most men dream of having. But he never once regretted it. All he ever talked about was you. I didn't know, Jasmine said quietly, looking at her father. You weren't supposed to, Marcus replied. I wanted you to have a normal life. Clean slate. But when you called, Reaper said, we came running. Because that's what family does. And you, young lady, are family by extension. They stayed for hours, sharing stories, laughing, remembering. Jasmine saw a side of her father she'd never witnessed before. The way he moved differently around these people, spoke differently, carried himself with a quiet authority that had nothing to do with intimidation and everything to do with earned respect. As they were leaving, Reaper pulled Jasmine aside. Your father sacrificed a lot to give you a better life. But when you needed him, when you needed that old life, he didn't hesitate. That's the kind of man he is. That's the kind of father you have. I know, Jasmine said. I've always known. Good. And remember, you've got brothers and sisters all over this country now. You ever need anything, you call. We take care of family. After they left, Jasmine and Marcus sat in the living room, the house quiet again. They're not what I expected, Jasmine said. What did you expect? I don't know. Scarier? Meaner? They seemed normal. Marcus smiled. That's because they are normal. They're just people who found family in each other. It's not about violence or crime or any of that media nonsense. It's about brotherhood, loyalty, having each other's backs. Do you miss it? Sometimes, Marcus admitted. I miss the freedom of the road, the simplicity of that life. But then I look at you, at the amazing person you've become, and I know I made the right choice. Jasmine moved to sit beside her father on the couch. Thank you for everything you did, for calling them, for protecting me, always, Marcus said. That's never going to change. Even when I'm old enough to protect myself, even then. That's what fathers do. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, and then Jasmine asked the question that had been on her mind for weeks. What happened to them? Brock and Tyler and Kayla. Marcus had been keeping tabs through his connections in town. Brock moved to Ohio with his uncle, enrolled in a different school. Last I heard, he's keeping his head down, working at a car wash. And Tyler, his family moved out of state. North Carolina, I think. Started over somewhere new. Kayla, still here, actually. Going to the community college. Working part-time at her mother's friend's boutique. From what I hear, she's changed. Actually changed, not just pretending. Do you think people can really change? Jasmine asked. I think people can grow, Marcus said carefully. Whether that's the same as change, I don't know. But I believe in second chances, even for people who've done terrible things. Not forgetting what they did, but allowing them room to become better. That's generous of you. It's not generous. It's practical. If we don't believe people can become better, then what's the point of any of this? Jasmine thought about that. About redemption and consequences and the space between punishment and forgiveness. She didn't have answers. Not yet. But she was learning. The school year ended with Jasmine giving a speech at graduation. She wore her cap over her now growing hair, which was coming back in thick coils that she was learning to love all over again. We've been through a lot this year, she told her classmates. Some of us more than others. We've seen the worst of what people can do, but we've also seen the best. We've seen change happen, seen justice served, seen a community come together to demand better. She looked out at the audience, spotting her father in the crowd, Reaper and Raven beside him. I learned this year that strength isn't about never getting hurt. It's about getting up after you've been knocked down. It's about using your voice even when you're scared. It's about finding family in unexpected places. The applause was thunderous. After the ceremony, as families gathered for photos and celebrations, Jasmine stood with her father, looking at the school building one last time. "You ready to leave this place behind?" Marcus asked. "Yeah," Jasmine said. "But I'm taking the lessons with me." She'd been accepted to 3 universities. Full scholarships to each, including one from an organization that supported survivors of hate crimes. She was going to study law, maybe become a civil rights attorney. She wanted to fight for people like her, people who needed someone in their corner. "Your mother would be so proud of you," Marcus said quietly. "I wish she could see who you've become." "Tell me about her again," Jasmine said, even though she'd heard the stories 100 times. Marcus smiled and started talking, and Jasmine listened, knowing these stories by heart, but never tiring of them. Her mother had been brave too, Marcus said. Had fought for what she believed in. Had loved fiercely and completely. "You're just like her," Marcus finished. "Stubborn and brilliant and absolutely fearless when it matters." That summer passed in a blur. Jasmine worked at the grocery store, saved money for college, spent time with friends. She continued running the Voices Club even after graduation, mentoring younger students, making sure the work continued. The scars from what happened were still there. Probably always would be. But they were healing, becoming part of her story rather than the whole story. On her last night, before leaving for college, Jasmine and Marcus sat on the porch like they'd done so many times before. "I'm going to miss this," Jasmine said. "Just sitting here with you. I'll still be here when you come home for breaks," Marcus said. "This will always be here." "Dad, what happens if something like this happens again? At college or somewhere else?" "Then you do what you did here. You stand up. You speak out. You don't let anyone make you small." He paused. "And if you need backup, you call me. Always call me. And you'll bring the Hells Angels?" Jasmine asked with a small smile. "If necessary," Marcus said seriously. "But I don't think you'll need us. You've got your own strength now. Your own voice. That's more powerful than any motorcycle club." Jasmine leaned her head on her father's shoulder. "I love you, Dad. I love you too, baby girl. More than you'll ever know." They sat there as the sun set over Wilson Creek, a town that had changed because one girl refused to stay silent, because one father refused to let injustice stand, because a brotherhood showed up when it mattered most. 3 years later, Jasmine would return to Wilson Creek with her law degree, ready to work at a non-profit, helping survivors of hate crimes. She'd walk through those same streets with confidence, her natural hair styled beautifully, a reminder of what she'd survived and overcome. She'd see Kayla Brennan working at the boutique, and they'd share a nod of acknowledgement. Not forgiveness exactly, but recognition of growth, of change, of 2 people who'd been on opposite sides of a terrible moment and had both learned from it. She'd visit her old high school and speak to the Voices Club, now run by a new generation of students who'd never known what happened to her, but who benefited from the changes she'd fought for. And she'd ride on the back of her father's motorcycle, the one he'd kept hidden in the garage all those years, feeling the wind in her hair and the power of knowing she was protected, she was loved, she was worthy. But that's a different story for a different time. For now, as Jasmine prepared to leave for college, as Marcus watched his daughter pack her life into boxes, as the sun set on a difficult chapter, they both understood something important. They'd survived. They'd fought back. They'd won. Not just against 3 bullies, but against a system that had protected those bullies. Against a culture that had allowed cruelty to flourish. Against the idea that some people were too powerful to face consequences. They'd proved that wrong. And in doing so, they'd changed not just their own lives, but the lives of every student who'd come after, every kid who'd been bullied and told no one would care, every family who'd fought alone and wondered if justice was real. It was real. It was possible. It just sometimes needed a father's love, a daughter's courage, and a brotherhood's loyalty to make it happen. Now before you go, I need you to do something for me. If this story moved you, if it made you think, if it reminded you that justice is possible even when it seems impossible, then share this video. Send it to someone who needs to hear it. Post it on your social media. Let's make sure Jasmine's story reaches as many people as possible. And hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Ring the notification bell so you never miss another story like this one. Drop a comment telling us what you thought, what you felt, where you're watching from, and what time it is in your location right now. We love hearing from you, and your engagement helps us keep bringing you these powerful stories. Like this video, share it with your friends, and remember, sometimes the quiet ones, the ones who keep their heads down and their past hidden, are the ones you don't want to mess with. Because they know things, they've seen things, and when they make a call, armies answer. Thanks for watching. Until next time, remember that your voice matters, your story matters, and you deserve to be protected, to be heard, to be treated with dignity and respect. Always.